Thank you for coming here tonight. Appreciate it. And what I want to start off with tonight is a resolution that was put into the state platform. And I'm getting a lot of flack right now from my primary opponent in her campaign, saying that this is just something that I pushed forward because of my campaign. And that is completely untrue, because this goes back almost a decade, and so I'd like to try to explain some of it to you so you know where it's coming from, and if you hear anything, you can certainly relay a message to them that this was a problem that was going on for quite some time, and it was finally corrected this year because of the stuff that happened in several campaigns here in Iowa for the congressional districts. So just to give you a little background on it to start with. I, as you know, am chair of the Winnebago County Republican Party. There are 20 counties in our district. Every chair and co-chair is elected to their county party, and when you are elected to the county party, you are also made part of what they call the First District Executive Committee, and that is a chair and a co-chair from those 20 counties. Now there are some larger counties, Lynn County, Blackhawk County, and Dubuque County, that their population is large enough that they get a couple extra people to sit on a committee. They aren't voting members, but they are allowed to be there at the meeting. So when we have our First District Executive Committee meeting, we have approximately 40 people that we'd like to have, that many that come there, and we conduct business for the First District here in Iowa. And that what we basically discuss is things that are going on in the district, stuff like county fairs, parades, how we can help each other, what has worked for one county, how we can help other counties. So it's kind of a group that knits all the counties together. And there has been this I've been on there now for 9 years, and ever since I started, there has been one continuous problem that we have tried to solve, and that is our problems that we have with the Republican Party of Iowa. Now, the Republican Party of Iowa is it's a group of people that we have the 4 districts, and each one of those districts has a district executive committee, and each of those committees elects 4 people to a state central committee. And then you have the Republican National Party chairman and chairwoman, and the chair and a co-chair of the Republican Party of Iowa. And the purpose of the Republican Party of Iowa is kind of the same situation that I complain about in Washington. They're supposed to be a servant of the 4 districts here in Iowa, and their job is supposed to help us accomplish what we want to do. Anytime we need information, if we need stuff printed, they're supposed to help us out and help us get that done and help us promote our county groups to elect Republicans to office. The problem is that, like in Washington with the 2 groups, I said you have one group that believes the government is our servant, and the other group believes that they're our master. And the problem with the Republican Party of Iowa has for too long been that they believe they're our master and not our servant. And that has created a lot of friction between the district executive committees and the county, each of the county Republican parties and the Republican Party of Iowa. And one of the things that we run into all the time is the Republican Party of Iowa trying to tell us how we're supposed to do our job, and even more than that is them telling us who at the county level we are supposed to run for candidates for each of our offices. And that was really brought to light to me back in, I believe it was 2014, when our state representative, who was a Republican, was resigning. And said nothing to anybody, and when we had our county convention, he stood up and he said, "I'm resigning, and this is who the Republican Party of Iowa has decided is going to take my place." And that really irritated a lot of people and got a lot of people angry. And when I talked about it at our next district executive committee meeting, we try to hold one every other month. I found out that our county was not the only one that this had happened to, and it had been going on for quite some time. And we always talked about how we could take care of that, how we could have better communications between the counties and the Republican Party of Iowa, and allowing them to give us more autonomy over what we were doing. And we never were able to kind of get that resolved between the district executive committees and the Republican Party of Iowa. And it just seemed to get worse over time. And it got to the point too where elected officials would show up in our counties during campaign season, and they would tell the Republican Party of Iowa what they were doing, but that message was never relayed to us at the county level. And candidates would just show up and expect us to drop everything and have a meeting for them. And one incident that really points this out was down in Benton County, where I'm not going to use any names of the candidates or people involved, but the candidate showed up down in Benton County and said, "I'm having a meeting down here. We need a place to have 150 to 200 people. I thought we use your county campaign office." What they didn't realize is that the county campaign office held about 10 people. And they never checked with the county chair or co-chair about what they were doing. They relied on the Republican Party of Iowa, and since the Republican Party of Iowa had never passed along the message to the county, it created quite a mess. So this has been going on for some time. And this year, like I said, we kind of had things come to a head. We had the Republican National Committee chairman, and I will use the name here, Mr. Steve Scheffler, because this is not the first time he's done this, and he is up for election this year at the state convention. What Mr. Scheffler did was to go online on social media and not only endorse my primary candidate, but then turn around and said some very negative and derogatory things about me. And that really set people off throughout our entire county. We've had other incidences that have happened with the chair of the Republican Party of Iowa, Mr. Jeff Kaufman. I was at the excuse me one second. I was at the Clayton County fundraiser last fall, and I was kind of sitting off to the side. And when Mr. Kaufman got up to speak, he started endorsing and going into this rant about my primary opponent and what a great person she was and how she needs to be elected, with me sitting right there in the audience. And he did the same thing down at Jackson County, and that time I was sitting right in front of him. So there was no doubt he knew I was there. He knew what he was doing, and he just continued on this rant of endorsing my primary opponent. And as I said, this has happened in other districts. In the 2nd district, we had some incidents down there, and in the 3rd district, we had Mr. Bill Schaefer down there, who's another constitutional conservative like me, but he is also a 30-plus year military veteran and retired from the military. And you would think with that kind of record, you would have someone like Joni Ernst, who touts her military career, would consult with him before she endorsed anybody. Problem was that she went ahead and endorsed his primary opponent without ever talking to him once. Never called him on the phone, never contacted him, and went ahead and endorsed his primary opponent. And obviously he was very upset about that. He thought there was some maybe camaraderie between the two of them because they were both veterans, but it didn't seem to make a difference. So we have this problem with establishment politicians and people that we have our own kind of Iowa swamp here, who want to have things their way, and they want to put forward the people they want elected, and they want to endorse them and support them throughout their campaigns, even in a primary. Now, as far as elected officials go, there's really nothing that we can do about that. But with people like Mr. Scheffler and Mr. Kaufman, they are elected by us, and their primary purpose is to support the Republican Party as a whole, and they should not be taking sides in a primary campaign. And so when all this happened this year, there were many people that said, okay, enough is enough. We need to take care of this. And so the way we do things with the Republican Party is with our platform. And our platform back in 2012 was a very long, drawn-out, unreadable thing. It was like a newspaper. It had contradictory things in it that nobody paid attention to. Even the governor of Iowa, Terry Branstad, said, nobody pays attention to this. You guys basically wasting your time printing this. So we had this idea back in 2014 to redo the platform, because it really was the will of the people, and that will should be followed. And 2014 is the first time that I was on the state platform. And to fill you in a little bit about that, the state platform committee consists of 16 people, 4 from each district, who are elected to that platform committee. So the 4 of us that are elected from the first district basically have to get the support. We have to run for that office, and we have to gain the support of the people at our conventions to get elected to that platform committee. And so when we got together in 2014, one of the people from our district, Mr. Tim Bush, had an idea to make our platform more concise, more readable, not put contradictory items in it. And so we set about doing that in 2014. And the first thing we did, we took our principal page that used to change every time the platform committee met, and we laid out 5 definite Republican principles that should never change, because our principles should never change. Those are things you should stand by, and they should be non-negotiable. And so we set those 5 principles out, and they have remained the same now for the last 8 years. And the other thing we did was to take what was called the planks in our platform and change them to legislative priorities. And back in 2014, we had over 400 planks, which were very long. Some of them were, half-page long, drawn-out things, and people tried to write legislation in their platform, and that's not what it was about. It was about telling people, our elected representatives, what the people wanted done. So we changed it from planks to legislative priorities, and we reduced it from over 400 to 51. And after we had that taken care of and we got it passed by the committee, it was given to RPI and the legislators down in Des Moines, and they basically looked at it and said, yeah, so what? And so I took it on myself to annotate the platform to show how much support from each district each one of those legislative priorities had. And we set up a meeting with RPI and some of the legislators, and it was quite the process to get a meeting even scheduled, because they thought that nobody really cared about this, and it was no big deal. And I finally wound up getting a 15-minute meeting with the leaders of RPI, and with some of the legislators down in Des Moines. And they tried to say it was only going to be 15 minutes because they didn't think myself and the other members would drive 3 hours down and 3 hours back for a 15-minute meeting. They were wrong. We went down there and we held our feet to the fire and had a meeting for about 45 minutes. And when we left, they understood that the platform was now supposed to be a guide for what the legislature was supposed to accomplish in each of the sessions. And we made it very easy for them by reducing it. We took it from a newspaper-sized thing to this. It's just a trifold that can be folded up and put in somebody's pocket. This has got our entire Republican Party platform on it, the preamble, the principles, and all the legislative priorities. So it made it real easy for people to carry around and reference. And that, on top of the effort that we made, really changed things down in Des Moines. And people started paying attention to this, and they started doing things that were in the platform. This was even brought out onto the floor in the Senate and in the House chambers. And when they had legislation, they said, well, we have to pass it because it's in the Republican Party platform. And that has progressed over the years as really a guideline or a list of things that need to be done down in the legislature, and it's worked very well. And you could take this now and go through it with a red pen and use it as a checklist for what's been done. So that's the avenue we took to try to correct this problem, this conflict between RPI and the district executive committees, and RPI trying to assume too much control over each of the district executive committees and the separate counties. And so what was introduced this year in the 1st district and the 2nd district, and we'll read this to you. It's not very long, but it's a very terse statement, and it gets right to the point. And it says, we believe that voting members of the Republican Party of Iowa State Central Committee, which includes RPI, should remain publicly neutral and should not endorse or denounce candidates in contested Republican primaries and presidential caucuses. We believe that voting members of the State Central Committee should not support non-Republican candidates in a general election, and insist that any voting member of the State Central Committee who does not otherwise, this is where we are referring to Mr. Scheffler, should resign or be removed from the State Central Committee. Now, the ironic thing about that was that it was proposed by the Linn County Republicans, which is the home county of my primary opponent. So this was not something that was just a surface irritation with myself and maybe some other people who supported me in other counties. This was something that deeply concerned everyone, including the people in Linn County, and they wanted to see it corrected. They are the ones that introduced this at our district or county convention, and it was passed at our county convention, it was passed at the district convention, and it moved on to the state platform committee, and it is now in the state platform for the state convention to vote on here on June 15th. So as I said, this is not something that I brought up. This is not something I'm being accused of pushing this because of the situation with my campaign. Now you know the full story behind it, and you know why it is in here, and this is our attempt to get this thing corrected. Now, my opponent could have came out when this was published, and she could have said, yeah, I agree with this, we shouldn't be doing this, and it's a good thing. She did not. So that kind of tells you where she stands on this issue. So that is what I wanted to get across today in our discussion, because it is kind of building into a controversy here between the two campaigns, and I just wanted everybody to know where this came from, how it came about, and that it actually originated from my primary opponent's county, and it wasn't from me. And when we voted on this in our district convention, I actually abstained from the voting because I thought that was the right thing to do. So that's where we are with that. I don't know if we have any questions yet from anybody. But I have some other things to talk about. But if we want to take some questions right now, we can take some questions. If there's any questions out there, feel free to raise your hand now or turn on your mic, and we'll get to you. Or we're taking them on Facebook and Twitter. So, like I said, if you have anything else to talk about, we can talk about it now. So, do we have any questions yet? Okay.
Thomas?
Oh, yes. Pamela, how are you?
I am well, Thomas. Thank you for being with us this evening and letting us pick your brain a little bit.
No problem. That's what I'm here for.
So I saw your subject was going to be on the party platform, so I did a little research on the Republican one and the Democrat and Libertarian. So, three-part question for you if you have time. Should be pretty quick.
Okay.
Okay. So I noticed that the Republican platform has about 2,000 words.
Mm-hmm.
Democrat has more than 6,000, and they're bullet points. I tried to get through them all, could not. The Libertarian Party, single page, 6 public policy objectives, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
So, regarding the platform, my first question is, do you feel a politician could possibly subscribe to all the planks in their party platform verbatim?
Because you were breaking up there just a little bit. Go ahead, let me just turn this up here. Okay, say it again.
Wait, do you feel a politician could subscribe to all the planks in the party's platform verbatim?
Yeah, no, nobody's going to agree 100% with anything. There's no way that's going to happen. What we tried to do is, with the principles section of it, we set out 5 principles that, yes, every Republican should hold those principles in their heart. They're very conservative. They talk about liberty, freedom, the right to life, Second Amendment stuff. But the principles are things that, yes, every Republican should believe in. And like I said, that was the problem we were having beforehand, is those principles changed every time the platform committee met. And so nobody really, there may have been something in the platform 2 years ago that wasn't in it now, and it's part of a principle. And people were kind of left up in the air about where they should be. And what the principle section is basically about is, if someone has a question about where they should be maybe standing on a vote, they can go to that principle section and their answer should be in there. And so with the principle section, yes, everybody should agree with that one. If they are going to call themselves either a Republican or a conservative, they should agree with those things. And the legislative priorities, a lot of, we have these 4 districts in Iowa, and we get legislative priorities from all 4 districts, and it is our job on the state platform committee to condense that down, because when we get those, we may get several hundred, I guess you would call them requests of things that should be legislative priorities. And what we do is we go down and condense them at the district level, and then we submit all 4 districts and condense them down further at the state level. And we get down to just some very specific things that our legislators should pass. One of the big things this year were the red flag laws, because that is coming up more and more, and so we want to make a statement about that. And that was something all the districts had talked about, so that got into the legislative priorities. We have often discussed that our legislative priority list is still too big. We would like to cut it down to 15 or 20 really important things that need to be done and have the legislature concentrate on those. But as far as everybody agreeing on each of the legislative priorities, that's just not going to happen. As I said, one of the things, it just comes from, they come from 4 different districts, and there are different concerns in the different districts, and we try to get it where there is at least some agreement between the districts before we put something in there. But some of those are very specific to a particular district, and it may not even concern any of the other 3 districts. So for a legislator to say he agrees with everything in there, there's just no way that they're going to be able to do that on the legislative priority side of the platform.
Okay, so getting into this a little bit more then, do you believe an elected official should support everything in their party's platform in order to show solidarity? Or do you think it's more important to express an individual viewpoint, even if it prevents a conflicting opinion, so that as not to mislead the constituents? Like saying I stand for the rhinos, okay? It's like I say this, but I really don't.
Yeah, I believe in being truthful with the constituents. A lot of politicians go out there with the idea of wetting their finger and sticking it in the air, depending on what group they're talking to, and change their opinions, and that's a good way to get in trouble. You should always stick with what you believe, and it's not a major thing to have a disagreement with a legislative priority in the platform. If you do not believe that it is something you can support, if you have a different opinion, that's perfectly fine, but you have to be open about it. You can't just get out there and, like with the Second Amendment, say, oh yeah, I support the Second Amendment, I'm a strong supporter of it. And then when something comes up like this red flag laws, start to waver on things and say, well, maybe that was a good idea. You either have to be a supporter of something and be truthful about what you believe in, or be quiet about it. So that's where I stand on it.
That's the way I feel too, because it's one of those things where I'm not going to agree with anybody 100% of the time, but at least if I know where you stand, as long as it's not a deal breaker for me, I can still support you. That's the way I feel about it. Okay, last question.
All right. Good.
What legislative priority would you like to see changed or added to the Republican platform, if any? I know you've worked on it all this time, so I'm sure you're.
Oh, yeah, I got them all swimming around in my head all the time.
Is there one particular one that you would?
Oh, let me think. Yeah, my priority has always been healthcare. And if you talk to anybody, that seems to be the major issue this election. I know on either side of the aisle, I know Abby Finkenauer has said this is the primary issue. Ashley Hansen has said this is the primary issue. I believe it's a primary issue. And I believe it's a primary issue enough where I put out an actual plan about how to fix it. And that is in our platform. That was one of the things, is to finally get rid of Obamacare and all the negative effects of it, and institute some kind of health care that we can take care of everybody in the country at a reasonable cost. So I think if there was one thing in the platform that I would really like to see done, is to get the health care taken care of. Because I think that's very important to our country to move forward in the future, is to get that problem taken care of. And like I said, be able to take care of everybody at an affordable cost. and also get, I know we've talked about this a couple times on these town halls already, but correct the things that need to be corrected, and just get people to be aware that their health is and a big part up to them, and make them aware of that, and try to help them take care of themselves. So I think that would be my major one, would be to finally get rid of Obamacare.
Okay, well, I thank you very much for your time this evening. I'll keep listening.
All right, thank you, Pamela. Good to talk to you again.
All righty then.
Okay, we have another question. John? Hello? You have your mic on. See, you're up on the screen. Okay. We don't have a problem with John right now, so we'll move on here with some other things that I would like to talk about. I guess one of the other things that I would like to talk about is there's been a very big deal made again by people who support my primary opponent about the money issue. And I think the people don't know a lot of what went on there, and so I'd like to discuss some of that also. One of the things that I constantly hear from people is that we need to get the money out of politics. There's too much money in politics. Money is influencing politics too much. We just need to get rid of it. And we need to get candidates that will support that. Well, that is what I tried to do with my campaign. Again, RPI and the establishment and the swamp rat Republicans, all they ever look at is how much money you're able to raise. They don't ever look at what you're actually able to do. And I always like to point out again, with me having plans for what I want to do and how I want to do them, because that seems to have been very important with people. People want to know that. And that seems to get a lot of support from people when you can explain what you want to do and how you want to do things. It seems to bring people into your camp. But like I said, this constant deal has been made about how much money is raised, and I said they always make a point of, well, you didn't raise very much money. And well, that's because I didn't ask for any money. I think I asked 15 people total for money in this primary campaign, and I thought it was my obligation as somebody who decided to get into this race for the primary campaign. It was my obligation to fund my campaign, and so that is what I did. And of course, a lot of that doesn't show up on all the forms that you have to fill out for the government, the little booklet, the disclosure booklet you have to fill out. When I spend money on my campaign, it's not something I have to report. And so if you just look at the book, it looks like, well, God, this guy didn't make anything, he didn't raise anything, he didn't spend anything, when quite the opposite is true. So this is, like I said, this is something that's always brought up, that how are you going to campaign after if you win the election in the primaries on June 2nd, how are you going to be able to campaign beyond that and defeat Abby Finkenauer? And I was talking with a friend of mine the other night, and we were talking about this, and he says, Tom, he said, your primary opponent has spent $1 million on this primary campaign already. And he says, I know you've spent several thousand. He says, if you defeat this person who has spent $1 million on this primary campaign, and somebody defeats her that's only spent a few thousand, he says, I would suggest parking your pickup truck across your driveway at about 10 o'clock. He says, because the news people will be there by 11. He said, from that point on, he says, you have no problem raising money. He says, you will have no problem with publicity. He says, basically, everyone will know your name from coast to coast, and Abby Finkenhauer doesn't stand a chance. So that's the way. That was kind of a different, out-of-the-box way of looking at it, and it has a lot of truth to it. We've put a lot of effort into this campaign with putting our plans out there, with going to the county fairs when we were still able to do that, and just having people volunteer for our campaign and get our message out. And it seems to be working very well. Like I said, our Twitter accounts, I think, is at 20,000 now. Which is an amazing thing in 7 months. And that makes it very easy to put a message on there, hit a button, and get it out to tens of thousands of people. So our campaign has worked very well. I think we're in a good position to win this thing. And when we do, I said, publicity and money will be no problem. So that's the way I'm looking at it right now. We have a question from Twitter. Says, was there a certain moment or issue that made you decide to run for office? I don't know if there was a certain moment. Like I said, my big thing was that I have studied American history and constitutional philosophies all my life, and I just saw this slow degradation of constitutional law here in our society. It just seemed like the people that believed in socialism and wanted to weave that agenda into the fabric of America were never being challenged. I constantly said Republicans let other people define who we are and what we stood for too long. And I guess I would, and I watched this keep happening over time, and I think the thing that broke the straw that broke the camel's back was Obamacare. And like I said, I've explained this several times on this town hall, and we had figured this out. We were able to get good health care at a reasonable cost. I was willing to, I tried to put that out there for people to listen, and nobody listened. And then when Obamacare started, not only were we being responsible and trying to take care of ourselves and paying our own bills, but then I started getting a $1,500 to $3,000 extra tax bill every year. And the Republicans, the establishment Republicans that were in Washington, kept saying, we're going to get rid of this, we're going to get rid of this. And for 7 years, they put a bill on President Obama's desk to get rid of it, and he would veto it, and they would just throw up their hands and say, well, we'll try this again next year. Then in 2016, we won the House, we had the Senate, we won the Senate, we won the White House, and the president came out and said, Obamacare, we're going to get rid of it now. Except that the Republicans, the establishment Republicans in Washington, had no idea how to do it. They had wasted 7 years spinning their wheels and not trying to figure this out. And I had already figured this out. And so when I was invited to the White House in 2017, I wrote a 3-page letter to President Trump detailing my plans. I wasn't able to give it to him, but I gave it to his aide who delivered it to him. And whether coincidence or not, part of that plan of having transparency in hospital costs takes effect next year. So I think if there was one thing that irked me enough to jump into this race was the establishment in Washington, the establishment Republicans saying they were going to get rid of this awful thing for 7 years, and then not being able to do it because they really had no plans to do it. And the icing on the cake, I guess, was when they finally got rid of the individual mandate. And they came out and had a big celebration and said the individual mandate is gone. We've taken care of that part. The problem they didn't tell anybody was they kept the fine in place for 2 more years. So in 2017 and 2018, they tried to assess that fine to me again on my taxes. And that is when I took the stance and said, I'm not paying this anymore. I wrote the IRS a letter saying that I wasn't paying it anymore. And since it was now illegal, I want all my money back. And they sent me some forms to fill out to try to get my money back. And I don't know where that stands now. But if there's one thing that pushed me over the edge, it was Obamacare and the establishment people in Washington saying they were going to take care of a problem, and when they had the chance to, having no problems, no solutions to the problem. And it was at that point that I noticed Washington was completely dysfunctional, and we needed some people there that actually worked for a living, that knew what was going on. And with my plans, I always say that plans are show people you're smart enough to figure out what's wrong and devise a solution, and it shows people that you're not one of the sheep, that you're a leader. And I think we need more leaders in Washington, and that's what I'm planning to be. So that's I've answered that question that way. So we have another question. Another one from question: why is Abby Finkenhauer defeatable? Well, because Abby Finkenhauer has no more plans than Ashley Hansen does. And Abby Finkenhauer is just a puppet of her party, and I quite frankly believe that Ashley's just going to be a puppet of her party. Like I just finished saying, we need actual working people in Washington, people that have plans, people that are going to stand up to people and say this is what has to be done, and this is the way we need to do it. And so far, Abby Finkenhauer hasn't done that at all. She's done everything that Nancy Pelosi has wanted her to do, except when Nancy had the votes, and voting a certain way would make Abby look bad. Then she let her off the hook and vote the opposite way, so when campaign time came around, she could say, well, I didn't vote for that. So I think Abby Finkenhauer is a very weak candidate. Like I said, I would love to debate her on tax reform, immigration reform, healthcare reform. How do we get young farmers back on the land? These are all things I have plans for that I've thought about for a long time, and I really think she has no clue about any of those. And so I would love to debate her on that, and that is why I think she's a very defeatable candidate. So, if other questions? See that John up there. Oh, no more questions right now. So I guess what I would like to say to everybody right now is that we're 4 days before the election. I think I've shown myself to be somebody who puts a lot of thought into what they're saying, a lot of thought into their plans. I've studied things for a long time, and I come at this job with a perspective of a working person. I've worked with my hands all my life, and in my spare time, I've done the studying that I need to inform my mind, to make up good plans and make good decisions and show people that I'm a leader. And I really think people are disgusted with the way Washington is right now. That we have people that are just sheep that follow the leadership. We definitely showed back in 2016 that even though we had all three branches or we had the House and we had the Senate and we had the White House, that there was still people that were not willing to step forward and take a leadership position, and what they actually did was step forward and fight the president, in some cases just as bad as the Democrats did. So I really want to change that. And the way this whole campaign has turned out with the COVID-19 crisis, it has really changed the whole landscape of campaigning. We're doing these virtual town halls now, and I hate the word virtual. I'm getting to be really disgusted by it, because I'm always a person that likes to talk to people face to face. Before this all started, I would stand for 1 or 2 hours in front of groups and just answer questions, and I thought that was great. It really informed people. And right now, like I said, even though I could push a button and get a message out to tens of thousands of people, it's not the same as communicating with people one-on-one. I really miss that. But we have to work with what we have right now. And so that's why I've been telling everybody, when they make any comments, I've been getting a lot of posts and stuff on Twitter, on Facebook, complimenting me for my views and saying that people have voted for me. And what I've expressed to them is that I really appreciate that, but you have to step up a little bit more in this time. I was talking down in Jones County this past fall to Matt Whitaker, who I consider a friend, because he actually remembered me when he was running for the Senate many years ago. And when we met again, he looked at me, he says, "You're Tom, I remember you, the guy with the mustache." And made me feel good that he remembered me. But when he gave his speech, he was expressing to everybody how important this upcoming election was. And one of the things he pointed out to everybody that was there at the dinner was that this election is so important. He says that I'm doing things that are out of my comfort zone. He says, I really hate going and door knocking, or trying to communicate with people one-on-one to get them to vote for somebody. He says, but I will be trying to do some door knocking this year. Of course, this was before the COVID-19 deal. But the point he was trying to get across was that this election is so important that we have to do stuff that's out of our comfort zone. And so that's what I've asked everybody to do that sends me this message, is that they like my plans, they like what I stand for, and they voted for me. I always express to them, that's great, I appreciate it, I really do, from the bottom of my heart. But you need to do just a little bit more. It's a patriotic duty right now to go out, grab 10 of your friends, and get them to go vote. I did that when I answered the Right to Life Coalition survey. I got almost 200 cards from people requesting that I answer this survey, and I did. And when I did, I had a card printed up and it said, okay, I answered your survey, please go read it, and then go out and talk to 10 of your friends and tell them to vote for me. And I sent almost 200 cards out. So that's what I'm asking all of you to do. We have another question from Quinn on Facebook. It says, so Ashley is a young gun. Sounds like a lot of compromising and bending to the NRC. How does that help Iowa? It doesn't. This is exactly what I was talking about. The whole deal with the NRC, which is the National Republican Committee, National Republican Congressional Committee. The only thing that they look at is how much money you've raised, basically. If you look at the candidates they are supporting, that's their one criteria. You get moved up into different tiers depending on how much money you have raised. And when you do that, you are beholden to them. And like I said, that's is part of what is wrong with Washington nowadays is we have people that don't want to stand on their own 2 feet. And when you're not willing to stand on your own 2 feet and say, I'm going to do something different, I'm going to do it this way, this is what needs to be done, this is how we need to do it, it's very hard to get anything done, because you have to do what they're telling you to do. And if you're willing to compromise your principles and bend to the NRC, you're not going to have a very good chance of getting anything that is near and dear to your heart done. As I said, I always believed in Teddy Roosevelt's philosophy of walk softly and carry a big stick. It's perfectly fine to talk with people, try to explain your situation to them, what you want done. If you have good plans, they will seem reasonable to people. But like I said, sometimes they need encouragement. And that's where, if you're not beholden to people, you are able to get things done. And that's why President Trump has been able to get some of the things that he has been able to get done. Is because he's not beholden to anybody. He doesn't owe anybody anything. He got to the presidency on his own, and he can push the things that he believes is constitutional and right for the country. He can push those forward without having to compromise on things. And as you've seen with him, when people try to buck him, he's not afraid to fight back, to punch back. And that's the way I think things have to be done in Washington. You don't have to be nasty about it, but you got to be willing to be willing and able to fight back. You can't take this attitude that I'm going to compromise with everyone, because that also means compromising with socialist people that want to take away our rights and our liberties. And like I said, as we've seen here over the last couple of months, there are plenty of people out there that want to do that. So yes, I do think that compromising and bending to the NRCC is not a way to win elections. The way to do it is to stand up and put your plans and your ideas out there and shows everybody that you're a person of principle, that you may be willing to negotiate how to do something, but your principles are going to still remain the same. So, we have any more questions out there? No more questions from anybody tonight. And like I said, I know this is getting down to the wire here, so one more time, I would like to encourage all of you, if you care about changing Washington, you can't be putting the same old sheep in there and having them follow people. You need to put people in there that do have ideas. So I encourage everybody, maybe over this weekend, get in touch with people that are running for office, ask questions, find a little bit more about them, go visit their websites. I've put a lot of stuff on mine on HansenForCongress.com. You can go there. The people I've gone there have told me to tell other people to expect to spend an hour there, because there's that much stuff to read. But I think if you do go there and you do read it, you will walk away as a more informed voter, and you will be able to make a better choice when you go to the voting booth on June 2nd. And I do encourage everybody to do that. I know there's going to be a lot of restrictions in place, but as Republicans, we've never liked absentee voting. We've always felt it our duty to walk into some place and cast our ballot. And I know there are also a lot of people who have contacted me that are just waiting for that day to do that. So I encourage everybody, go out, contact your friends, find out what I'm about, contrast the two candidates in this race, Don't take anybody's word for anything. Look things up for yourself. Do some investigation. And when you finally do make a choice, like I said, step out of that comfort zone. That's going to be very important in the primary race. And I think it's going to be very important in the general election because the way things look, we have counties I know here in Iowa that are going to be very hesitant about opening things up to actually going out and campaigning. We had one supervisor up in my hometown, my home county, Winneshiek County, that made the mistake of going out and door knocking last week, and he caught hell for that, for knocking on people's doors. And we're going to have to see changes in people's minds. It's not going to take the governor just saying everything's okay now, go back and assume your normal lives. We're going to have to get into the mentality of people's heads again and get them to realize that there is not this great fear out there of this flu bug, and get them to think a different way before we'll be able to hold any kind of live town halls again. I was told that even debates between myself and Abby would probably be done this way, and I guess this is my way of getting out of my comfort zone because I really hate this. But it's something that we have to do. I'm getting a little more comfortable with it, and after June 2nd, I really hope to be doing many more of these with you and really digging into some of the issues that are important to you, and going on in November and beating Abby Finkenhauer, then going to Washington and hopefully get Washington straightened out. I like to put out, a shout to people in 3rd District, where Bill Schaefer is. Get out and support him. He's a good guy. Like I said, he's another constitutional conservative like myself, and he needs your support there because he's fighting another establishment candidate, and the establishment is really down on him too. So get out there, you people in the 3rd District, and support Bill, and let's win this thing. And Bill and I have already decided that after June 2nd, we're going to do some of these things together because we're going to try to hold non-establishment town halls. And I think that's going to be a good thing for everybody because it's going to give everybody a real different perspective of the different people running out there. And I think it'll give a fresh perspective to everybody and really give them some hope that there are people out there that can change things, that we are not going to go to Washington and just be the same old establishment types and fall in with them and not get anything done. So I thank everybody for all your support. It's been great watching our support build on Facebook and on Twitter. Like I said, to have 20,000 people on Twitter in 7 months, just by putting your ideas out there. I thank my campaign manager for that. That was his idea. I didn't think it would work so well. He kept encouraging me to do it, and it really worked well. It took off, and like I said, with this whole COVID-19 deal, it was a brilliant move. So I really appreciate him hounding me on it and getting it going because it's really made this campaign easier, and he's done some wonderful things with electronic media and getting our message out there that way. So my thanks to Aaron. I really appreciate it, and thank you to all of you who came and volunteered for our program, because I made the point that I never chased anybody around with a clipboard asking them to volunteer. Everybody that volunteered for my campaign came to me. My campaign was run by volunteers, which again held down the costs. So I really appreciate all you people out there that volunteered for the campaign and that have yard signs up now. Thank you very much, and we hope, and I'm gonna say I'm going to see you after June 2nd. My friend that I was talking to that stays involved with politics, I asked him what he thought my chances were. He says, to be truthful with you, he says, I think you got a better than 50-50 chance of winning this. So that was also very encouraging. And so look forward to seeing you after June 2nd. Take care of everyone. Keep pushing to open this country back up, get things back to normal and not the new normal. And hopefully on June, what would be 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, June 6th, next Friday, coincidence, D-Day. That'd be a great day to have a town hall saying that we won the primary. So have a good night, everybody. I appreciate it, and appreciate all your support. Get out there and get the word out. Thank you very much. Have a good night.